Hello and welcome to the future of quality assurance. I'm Supriya Gondkar and I'll be your moderator for the podcast series AI in Quality Assurance. Together, we will explore how AI isn't just changing the game, but is rewriting the rules of quality assurance. For that, we have with us two incredible guests today: Mark Kremer, CEO of ConformIQ, and Archie Chaudhury, CEO of Layerlens, who would be sharing their expert insights and experience around AI in quality assurance, right from test generation to defect detection. But before we begin, I know that Mark and Archie possess a unique expertise around QA and AI. I would request Mark and Archie to introduce themselves and share insights with our audience as well. Mark, let's get started with you.
Oh, thanks, Supriya. And just want to let you know I'm excited about the opportunity to have the discussion with Archie about QA and AI and what's been going on. Interestingly, I've been chasing this AI dream for over 40 years. I'm much older than I look, I'm sure, but the I worked on projects when I was in school, and working on not only from a technology point of view, but also from a business point of view. And I envisioned back then that AI would have a significant impact on the world and where it's going and what it offered. And interestingly, I came to the conclusion at that time there were a few things missing, and certainly all the available data and information and so on that is available today, which is amazing, and then also the computing technology. Back then, they developed special computing technology. Well, now the technology required to implement the algorithms for AI are pretty much easily done with the new hardware that's available. So I kind of feel like the dog that's been chasing the car, and I actually caught it, and I go, "All right, what do we do now?" And that's what we're here to talk about in terms of AI is here, it's real, and it's changing the world. Let's figure out how to embrace it. Archie?
Well, I don't have certainly as thank you for the introduction. I don't certainly have as long-winded of a background as Mark does. He really has an extensive background. He's been studying this for way longer than even I've been alive. But I really got into AI during during the generative AI boom, and it's um it's been interesting to see how for this new era of automated generation and sort of automated text prediction, how testing works, right? How evaluation works, how validation works, and if you really look at sort of where this industry is going, it is still, even though we think hey, ChatGPT has become a common part of our lives, people are using these technologies to build new ones on top of it. There's still very little being done in terms of assurance and validation, right? Gen AI as a whole, hasn't had its sort of cybersecurity moment that the internet did. So to me, that's become really interesting as a field to study and to obviously build a business in, is how can we help ensure that those standards, those that validation is being set in place. And yeah, I think that's sort of the interesting part behind why I'm doing at least what I'm doing. So
Awesome. With this, let's dive in. This is going to be a three-part series where we discuss everything from AI and quality assurance to testing the AI applications. Our first episode focuses on users' current situation and the challenges that they often face. Mark, let's get started with you. You work with a lot of quality assurance customers. What is their behavior around AI today? What are they really expecting?
Good question. One the kind of the way I see it is customers over the past 15 years, which is what I've been at ConformIQ. Um, their hope has been to be able to deliver high quality software with as little effort as possible. If I could, the concept of years ago of quality's free. Well, quality's free if you're committed to it. And interestingly, today, I think customers have expectations that Gen AI is going to get them there. They're going to, it's going to allow them to automatically generate test cases, test their software with doing little or no work. And frankly, I'm not sure that that's going to happen. Particularly without some validation and controls that I think that will be necessary. So, Gen AI will help a lot with enhancing our ability to deliver quality software, but it's not a magic pill, in my point of view. And I'm curious to get Archie's thoughts on that.
Yeah, at least in the AI in Gen AI specifically, there is a yeah, and Mark makes a great point where is this really going to help us lead us to that? There's this entire sort of field of study called using language models as judges, right? So can we have language models generate test cases, or can we have them look at existing test cases or scenarios and judge whether they're accurate or not, right? And this involves sort of prompting some external language model, giving it the context behind what is being evaluated, what is being tested, and then it essentially rating it on some numeric metric or binary metric. And it's good, but there's been a multitude of research sort of suggesting that these language models themselves can be biased, and they themselves can have problems when it comes to evaluating different things. And on a similar note, Mark mentioned you're actually generating test cases. At least in the evaluation space, there's been numerous efforts being made to generate using language models, entire sets of synthetic data or synthetic test cases or synthetic questions that can be used to evaluate other AI applications. And even in those, it's been found that you often need some sort of human validation, human in the loop, in order to counter react any potential bias. So I think, especially when it comes to testing AI, using AI, that field is still very early. We're seeing a lot of that in some of the safety and alignment benchmarks and evaluations where language models are being used to sort of generate adversarial prompts, adversarial test cases for other language models to see if they behave in a way that is threatening to humanity or behaving in a way that is counterproductive to sort of how we want these models to behave. But overall, I think that the trend is still very much towards this being very early in the industry.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys hear a lot from the customer expectations, but have you received any feedback on the value it is providing to the customers? Somebody who has implemented AI and they've received great value out of it. Do you guys have any experience around that?
So, yeah, interesting question. Our customers today are actually, using the ConformIQ technology, which is actually symbolic AI based. So there is an AI component there. To reduce defect leakage, be definitely much more productive in terms of generating test cases and scripts for test automation. And part of our process is actually visualizing the business flows so that you can understand much better the type of testing and the areas of testing that you're generating those test cases for. But frankly, the customers are now looking to Gen AI to generate those test cases automatically without necessarily understanding what they're actually testing. And as a result, the output from Gen AI needs to be validated, and that's an extra step in the process. And so the comparison between using an approach like ConformIQ versus GenAI is interesting, because if you're just using GenAI, you can get some test cases and some scripts very, very, very quickly, and you'll be able to execute them, and you'll get results back from a test execution environment. Uh, but the question is, how good is that? Is that going to achieve the objectives that I had for delivering a quality software application? And um, that's not clear. And then there's the complexity on top of it, which Archie, you're talking about, is which language model does that best, and which one do I use, not only for uh, you know testing traditional applications. What do I do now if I integrate AI applications and language models and agents to uh, provide more functionality to my customers, my customers being our customers' customer. How do I test that? So it's not only the complexity of the application and understanding the traditional one, but now we're adding AI components into that, and that complexity, I don't think is understood by people who are building these applications, let alone how do we test them effectively to ensure that they provide valuable, high quality interaction with the end customer. So um, you know back to the point I made before, there needs to be some validation in that process, and I think I, I'm looking at it as the combination of Layerlens and ConformIQ can provide significant value, to our customers together.
Yes, absolutely. And I think when it comes to what language model does that best, that's it's a heavy-handed question. Something we've been trying to solve for almost a year now, which is like which language model does XYZ task the best. And that's one part of the puzzle, and that's probably the one we think we have something for. But the second part of the puzzle, which I think requires, you know, as you mentioned, which requires some sort of you symbiosis or collaboration between the two technologies, is how can we actually take generative, how can we apply traditional testing scenarios and methodologies to Gen AI, right? Something that's fundamentally non-deterministic, something that's fundamentally rooted in probability, right? The probabilistic methods of predicting the next token over some for some input. How can we integrate traditional testing into it? It's a very, I guess, I don't want to say heavy-handed, but sort of double conversation where right now we don't even know how these language models work internally. So the best shot we have is sort of attaching certain methodologies, certain consistencies, and to give us a good amount of predictive value of, hey, we are 95% sure that this model will behave in this way when it comes with these sets of inputs, right? And that, I think, that sort of logical validation is something that's sort of missing in the industry right now. A lot of the AI testing phase is really, it's reliant on sort of the users coming up with their own test cases, right? Their own inputs, outputs, and sort of running it through some sort of validation platform. So I think that's a potential development that still hasn't been done yet, and it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, actually, I was wondering, some part of it you have already answered, but you work with LLMs, you do a lot of evaluation, you work with all the latest models. Comparing that to traditional testing, are there any similarities or differences?
There's parallels in the goal, right? The goal for any testing or evaluation is, okay, how can I validate for my stakeholders, my customers, meaning our customers, as Mark was saying, that this is working the way it's expected to. And and fundamentally the inputs and outputs are very similar. You have some sort of, in AI evals, you have prompts. In traditional testing, you probably have test cases where, like, does this application behave this way when the user makes this request? but that's where sort of the similarities end, right? Like when it comes to LLM evals, the tricky part happens when there's so many new models coming out to where and it's becoming easier and easier to switch between models, right? So if Google releases their new version of Gemini, it's usually compatible with OpenAI. Like if I'm building an LLM agent application, I can just transfer that to Gemini if I get a performance improvement. So consistent testing is becoming more and more critical when it comes to AI evals, right? Because when, in contrast to traditional software testing, right, you probably maybe, and Mark maybe knows more about this, you probably only test when you have a push or you're updating, making an update to the code base, you're releasing a new version, you undergo significant testing. But with AI evals, it's almost becoming a organizational need where it's like, okay, we have a new model coming out, let's evaluate, let's benchmark it to see how well it does for our use case, because we might want to switch it because it brings us XYZ percentage improvement in performance and latency and so on and so forth. And then the second part of it is there's just the traditional testing industry is just so much more mature. Right, there's numerous benchmarks for almost every category that you can think of when it comes to traditional software, especially business to business software, versus Gen AI, where the industry is really less mature to where there's not that many benchmarks and there's not that many evaluations. And that is actually one of the largest problems in the industry is how can we get better evaluations that more match the use cases that people are actually using them in. A lot of the benchmarks are what I like to call very intellectual, for the lack of a better term, in the sense that they are often, in the sense that they're often like focused on intellectual things that that are different from how you or I use LLMs. Like one example being like this benchmark that measures the International Math Olympiad, right? Like how good a model does on that. It's cool, but it's very different from how you or I may use these models in practice. So I think that's probably the biggest. Those are sort of the similarities and
Okay.
differences that I
All
see.
right. So this was really interesting conversation, very insightful as well. But this brings us to the end of the session. But before we close, Mark, Archie, do you have any word of caution, advice to the users who are trying to implement AI, especially people expect everything from Gen AI. Gen AI should be able to do everything in testing. So, do you have some word of advice?
At least from the ConformIQ standpoint, we are really focused on uh, the traditional software. And interestingly, we have employed, as I mentioned, symbolic AI to provide the productivity increases that our customers are looking to get from Gen AI as well. And Archie is talking about the differences between Gen AI and traditional applications, and uh, the difference I think is the predictability of the traditional applications, where Gen AI is not predictable, and so uh, you know, you know, interestingly, the artificial intelligence that uh, you know Conform IQ has implemented and actually pioneered over the last 20 years is deterministic. It's predictable. The results are such that, hey, if I'm testing something or I'm generating tests, um, with the same set of inputs, I'm going to get a predictable set of outputs, and there's value in that. So um, the to address the question that you asked, Priya, was are there some warnings? Well, um, I think customers are going to have to look at how do I kind of separate, uh, you know, the components of the application and how I'm delivering those to the customer, and then how I test them. And if you can have some predictability in that process and some well-defined, inputs and outputs, as Archie mentioned. Um, you can get that with the traditional value or traditional AI using symbolic AI, for instance, from a Conform IQ, but you really need to keep both in mind. So that's the challenge for people. I mean, you can't just test the AI component and not test the traditional component. You really have to address the combination of the two, and uh, that provides an incremental set of complexity that what is Gen AI going to solve that problem, or is human in the loop and a strategic way of testing these applications together going to deliver value and help you understand what you're delivering? So I know in future discussions we're going to talk about, well, people have actually implemented stuff with Gen AI, and the results are not even close to what their expectations are. And we're going to share some of those things with you, in our future podcast. So, it's something that you need to go into with open eyes, and that would be my recommendation. What do you think, Archie?
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of points I was going to say, but
Oh, sorry about that.
no, great minds think alike, right?
Yeah, there you go.
I think that the one takeaway I would have is it, with Gen AI, especially this is a problem sort of rooted in Gen AI. I think it was a problem in traditional software, but maybe it isn't anymore. Is there's a lot of claims that are being made, right? When we talk about we're getting to artificial general intelligence, like AI can automate your entire job, and here's all of these different measurements from all these different labs that claim to do so. I think the takeaway is don't trust, verify, right? Validate the software yourself. If you're a purchaser or a consumer of the software in an enterprise business to business setting, you need to be able to verify and validate that it is actually doing what it's going to do, what it says it's going to do. If you're building your own software or your own agent, as Mark said, not only do you need to test the AI part of it, but you also need to test the actual software part of it, the traditional Web 2 software, and see if it's working the way it's supposed to. Because again, with the emphasis on the current market, right? It's a lot of, hey, let's shift this as fast as possible. Let's get to as much revenue as possible. Let's just move, without validating the software, without validating the code is working the way it's supposed to. And increasingly at a lot of new software companies, code is increasingly being written by these AI models. You're building AI applications using AI, and in a lot of cases, that software, the test cases that a traditional developer would write, AI is not writing them. So the need for critical paramount testing technologies has never been greater. For technologies like Marks and Conformix. So it's absolutely, I think it's absolutely more of a need now than ever.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. It was a pleasure talking to you. In our next episode, we will focus on the right approaches and methodologies. Stay tuned. And if you have any feedback, comment below and share your feedback with the email ID provided on your screen. Until next time.